So let's talk about the balancing act here with parents who are doing the best they can to run their household, raise their kids, but also they're working professionals. And many of the folks who listen to this show either run their own business or they're in a senior leadership position. And so there's a very demanding job, very demanding hours, and they have children of all ages. For the purposes of this question, let's focus on the youngest kids. So we're talking about, basically from the parent who just got back into their role after a few months of taking some maternity or paternity leave, up to about age, let's call it 6 or 7. Those really demanding early years of very hands-on parenting. Um, we know childcare is a challenge all over the world. Some people have the benefit of extended family close by, but many, many people do not. How do you help parents in that situation, demanding job, lots of hours, maybe not a super flexible employer, and a very demanding chapter of your parenting life? How do you help them prioritize their time? And what are the red flags you advise those leaders to watch out for, both on the professional side and obviously on the parenting side of their life, to not allow those to get too out of whack?
That is a great question. And I don't think there is a straightforward answer to it because culturally, depending on where your listeners are, what I say that might be relevant here in the UK might have absolutely no relevance in another country. And also, you made the point there that it depends on the kind of company that you work for. Some companies really embrace the parenting journey and really support their employers on being present. Other companies are very demanding and, you've had a baby, great, get back into work. We've got money to make. That for me is a red flag immediately. I think if you work for an organization that has those kind of views, or if you work for a manager that has those kind of views, I think is a red flag. And it's easy for me to say, get out. I know everyone's got their own financial situation and they've got to look after themselves and their families. But I think, somebody once told me that because my children are still young, mine are 5, 3, and 1. So I've got very young children. Right? And, I often speak to parents whose children might be in their teens or in their 20s. And they say to me, they worked in an era where their children were young, obviously, and work was very much 5 days a week in the office, and you do as you're told. And they say to me, you never get those days back, and you don't realize how quickly those days pass. Now, I don't necessarily feel that because I'm living it right now. I'm living the chaos and the carnage of 3 children who are 5 years old and younger. And I, in my own mind, I'm thinking, gosh, when will this nightmare end? But these parents further down look back and say, you don't realize how lucky you are, how blessed you are to have those children. Make every day count. And I think those workplaces that allow you to, we're filming this now as we approach Christmas, that allow you to go to your child's nativity play without hesitation, that allow you to go to your parent teacher meetings without even having to ask, that allow you to come to work on time or at time after you've dropped your children off, or leave early, log off early, and maybe log on a bit later once they're in bed. I think having that flexibility is really important. And I'm not saying be lazy. I'm not saying use your children as an excuse to be lazy at work. What I'm saying is find that balance between allowing work, having work allow you to be the most present parent that you can be. Because your children, when they get older, they're not going to care that you were earning 100,000, 200,000, $300,000 a year and busting your guts to earn money to provide for them. They're not going to remember that. What they're going to remember is that you weren't there. What they're going to remember is that you weren't present. You weren't there to read them a bedtime story at night. You weren't there to take them to school. You weren't there at their nativity play when they were looking out in the audience and every other child's parents are there. So it's really finding that balance between what's important to you in life. And if people listening to this say, actually, you know what? What's most important to me now is my $500,000 salary. Fine. I respect that. I can't argue against somebody whose priority is earning as much money as possible. Or if you're running a business, I know what it's like. You've got to graft. You've got to sometimes log in at silly o'clock and get that business going. I get it. But it's about making sure somewhere in your diary there is a nice different color, a yellow block that says spend time with my son or my daughter, or there is a block there that says nativity play, or there's a block there that says something that might be really important to your child, their dance rehearsal or whatever it might be, and trying to fit that in with your schedule because your business will carry on growing. With God's grace, your business will carry on growing. It doesn't matter if you miss an hour. Ultimately, your relationship with your child later on, as they get older, is shaped by the decisions that you make when they are young.